Shalom and welcome again here to Shoroshim of the Old City, Shoroshim, the biblical shop in the Old City. We tried doing something on YouTube before. It was a disaster. So those of you that tuned in on YouTube, I apologize. It didn't work out very well. Sound was not on. We want to focus today on a specific event in this week's Torah portion. The Torah portion is Vayishlach. Vayishlach is Yaakov sends messengers or angels to Esav to find out what's going on because he's about to confront that brother he's so afraid of. And the Torah portion is Genesis 32:4 to 36:43. And he prepares, as we'll see, but then he's left alone. And that issue of being left alone was a very traumatic event for Yaakov. It's actually a very traumatic event for a lot of us in our daily lives. So that's what I want to focus on. The word livado, and Yaakov was left alone. So let's go back. First of all, in a world of exponential growth, population growth, being alone is a very frustrating thing. And there's nothing sadder than being alone when you're in the midst of a crowd and still you feel alone. So the concept of being alone is an incredible challenge to us. It can be a challenge with which we grow out of, which is what I want to focus on in this week's Torah portion, or it can be a very crippling challenge. So we know that being alone was not what Hashem intended for us in this world as a constant state. In fact, when he creates Adam, he creates man, he says, Lo tov heyot Adam levado. It's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make him a helpmate, opposite him. He's going to find that one person who will give him meaning, direction, and challenge in order for him to find himself. So is the word levado, alone, a negative experience? Or is it a challenge? That's what I want to sort of really investigate and explore in this week's Torah portion. So when Yaakov returns from Lavan with his growing family, coming with camels and sheep and oxen, he had succeeded in that world that was so foreign to him. And he comes and knows that he's about to meet Esav. And he sends messengers, we believe even angels, to go and see what is the story with Esav. And they come back with a very disturbing report. They come back and say to him, the angels return to Yaakov saying, Genesis 32:7 and 8, we came to your brother, to Esav, and he's also coming towards you, and 400 men are with him. And Yaakov became very frightened and was distressed, so he divided the people with him and the flocks and the cattle and the camels into two camps. Yaakov prepares for this encounter in three ways. That's actually an important thing for us to think about for ourselves, facing an encounter we're not sure of. He first of all prepares a gift, right? We see in Genesis 32:22, so the gift he prepared passed before him. Also prayer. We see in prayer that he turns to Hashem, God of my father Abraham, and for war. He means I'm going to split him up into two camps. If one gets decimated, destroyed, the other will be able to escape. And he does it all because he's preparing for that fateful meeting. He goes even further. He arose during that night, and he took his two wives and his two maidservants and his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Yabok. And he took them and brought them across the street, and he took what was his, and he went back across. And then the verse says, Vayivater Yaakov levado vayavek ish imo ad alot hashachar. And Yaakov was left alone, levado, and a man, an ish, wrestled with him until the break of dawn. So immediately we read first that Yaakov was left alone, and then we see that he wrestles with a man. So either he was alone or he was not alone. What exactly are we to learn from that? We learn subsequently that this person he encountered was actually not a person, but rather an angel, a spiritual being. We'll learn more about him in a second. The Bnei Yissaschar focuses on the fact that here he was left alone, and in that midst of being alone, he encounters an ish, he encounters this spiritual entity. And he says, in all of our lives, at critical moments in our spiritual growth, we're destined to confront a point of complete aloneness. In such times, we're thrust into situations where we feel disconnected. We disconnected from who we were in our past, our destiny. We feel for that one moment completely alone. And in that struggle, we end up struggling within us with our own insecurities, our own fears, all those things that keep us chained and unable to grow and get any further. Yaakov came filled with those concerns, filled with a sense of insecurity. He even says to Hashem, Katonti mikol hachasidim umikol haemet, I'm not worthy of all the mercies you've done for me. I'm not worthy of the truth you've shown your servant. So what was the psychological core of his sense of unworthiness? I mean, this is Yaakov, who received a blessing from his father. He received a blessing from Hashem himself. After the dream of the ladder, he's been given a promise. And when he leaves Lavan, again Hashem gives him a promise. What was his insecurity all about? And I think one has to go back to that very painful encounter with his father, when his father didn't know it was him, and Yitzchak blessed him. Yitzchak says to him something very, actually painful, not meaning to be, but he says, Hakol kol Yaakov, I'm hearing you, and you have that gentle, sweet, loving voice of Yaakov, but your hands are the hands of Esav. Those words seared into Yaakov's soul. Maybe that's true. Maybe I lost my sense of who I am. Maybe I lost that sense of my purpose. Maybe I became more like Esav than I was meant to be. And maybe that would make me unworthy of any of the blessings that Hashem gave me, that my father gave me. The voice of Yaakov and the hands of Esav, that's the hands he had to deal with. That's the struggle he had in that encounter with that angel that we believe is the angel of Esav. How much of Esav is in me? How much can I get rid of? I'm not worthy to go further if I became like Esav, who was only concerned about the here and now. The word Esav means asui, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm good. Rather than Yaakov, which means I'm going to go forward step by step until I become who I need to become. And so that struggle made him feel so insecure, and as a result, he was thrust in this place of complete aloneness. He was going to meet the real Esav, but he had to struggle with the Esav inside of himself. But he's not the only one that had to deal with that. We all of us in our lives, and all of Am Yisrael, all the people of Israel, Avram, the forefather, he was called an Ivri. Why was he called an Ivri? Because he stood on one side of the river while everybody else stood on the other. He was alone, knowing that he had to do what needed to be done because God expected him to walk into the unknown. Bilam, against his own will, he wanted to, or Balaam, I think you call him, he wanted to curse the people of Israel. He couldn't. He ended up blessing them, and he says, "Hein am levadad ishkon." Again, the word levadad ishkon, ubergoim lo yitchashev. A nation that will dwell in solitude, levadad, and not be reckoned amongst the nations. We then even hear, when the people of Israel lose their way, the prophet Hosea says, God telling, therefore, behold, I will allure her, I will invite her, and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly unto her. Hosea 2:16. Meaning Hashem is saying, how are they going to hear me? They'll only be able to hear me when I can bring them into that place of aloneness, that place of wilderness, that place where there's nothing but me and them. And it is then that they will hear that tender call of Hashem. And interesting, even the use of the word levado is an unusual thing, because it really should have been, Yaakov was left levad. But levado means levado, for him. He was left alone so that he could encounter Hashem in the hustle and bustle of his struggles with Lavan, the struggles of life, struggle of starting family. Sometimes he forgot, or maybe lost his way, and you need to come to that place of crisis and being alone in order to find his way and to know there's nothing to depend on but Hashem. And that's why Hashem is the one who's going ahead of you. He'll be with you. He won't abandon you or leave you. So don't be afraid or don't be terrified, but we need to be reminded of that. That's what the aloneness in our life sometimes can be. It can be a challenge, it can be frightening, or it can be an ability to find that power within us, to find Him within us, to find our connection to our Father in heaven within us. So the world is going through some incredible changes. America is in complete turmoil. The world is in complete turmoil. Some of the enemies around us are brandishing swords, are speaking against of destroying this place and this people. Whatever will happen in the American elections, it looks a little frightening in some ways. Meaning there are people who are raising their voices who Israel is not the issue, and they don't really care about even maybe putting them completely aside for some other grand scheme. It's going to be challenging, and at times we're going to feel alone, as many people in America perhaps feel. And yet it is in that place of aloneness that we need to find the strength again to depend on nobody, on nothing, but Avinu Shebashamayim, our Father who's in heaven. That's all we have. That's all of us have. So we will struggle and find commonality with our friends out there, those of you that are listening, those of you that are out there. We will find that, and we will find strength, and we will find the strength to go on, because that's what we need to do. But we're also going to be in times where we'll feel that pressure of being alone, like Yaakov did. And in the midst of those insecurities that will come and rise and bubble up, we need to be able to deal with that in order to find that strength to go forward and to move forward into Hashem's plan. So together, that's what we will do. And I thank you for listening to us. I thank you for joining us on our website and on our Facebook and reading the articles and commenting on the articles. I thank you for supporting us through the shopping in the shop. That helps greatly. It gives us the strength to go on in a time where there is a sense of aloneness. Sometimes in the shop, great shop, but it can feel alone. We wait for you. We know you'll be here. We know you'll come. We know that you hear the invitation like we do. Every single day when I walk into the old city, I feel that invitation. That invitation is for you as well. Your Father, my Father, our Father in heaven is inviting us all because He wants to spend some time with us in His house. So listen, hear that invitation, and know that alone is a very strange thing, because we never are alone. Hashem is there from the beginning all through the days of our lives until the end. So Todah, thank you very much. Shalom, Lihitraot from Shorashim here in the old city of Yerushalayim. Lihitraot until the next time.